Coming up on More Than Before.
That's what we're supposed to do with each other. We speak life into people. We don't hammer it over their head.
This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, I have the privilege of getting to talk to a local legend. He was a news anchor for over 30 years. I watched him as he took a leap of faith into politics and into entrepreneurship. He's the owner of Dancer Media, and he's a bold advocate for people who don't have a voice. He is passionate, bold, and he has a gift for telling stories that pull at your heart. He's a husband of 41 years, and he is a father to two incredible men. I like to call him the White Fox, but he is my good friend, Rick Dancer. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm going by the silver wave now. It's kind of more hip, you know?
I like it. Well, I'll start calling you the silver wave. It kind of makes sense because you kind of have a little bit of the surfer vibe.
Well, and it's like funny people, you know, all the years I was in news, I had this really short haircut. And then I go to my barber and he says, "Do you want to look like a hipster or a dad?" And I said, "How about a hipster?" So he gives me this haircut and then I grow the beard and now it's become like a thing. Like when I do TikTok lives or something, people come on and go, "Dude, you have the best TikTok hair." And I'm going, "Oh, there's my award." I was hoping, God, give me the best TikTok hair and I'll win the prize, you know?
Well, I mean, people do kind of want to be like you. I mean, there was a long stint. I think it still happens to this day of people that are trying to be like you, pulling your pictures off to create fake accounts. Like you have the face of a man that people want to be.
The catfish. It's I get so many of those. It's terrible what people do. A little note to people: never trust a picture that's on anything because it's probably not that person. But yeah, women get taken for money, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
What people will do out there. But yeah, I'm flattered. You know.
It's pretty crazy.
And sometimes splattered.
Well, it's so great to be talking with you. You know, it's funny because I was thinking about when we first met. You know, obviously I got to watch you growing up. You were in that nice box in our living room. Front room. Yeah, watching you on the news. And then it was funny because at the church that I was going to, you actually interviewed me for a very short segment for the church. And then later on, I got an opportunity to be in the background of a KEZI studio, kind of getting to see what it looked like, what it was like being in the newsroom, which is very different. And I would imagine today things are quite different, even from back then. But I'm curious, what are you doing nowadays? You're in Montana now. What kind of occupies your time? What are you passionate about nowadays?
Okay, so now I'm doing podcasting like this, and I do one a week. I was doing 5, and then somebody said, "Why do you do 5 a week?" I said, "Because I did 5 nights of news every night. I guess I feel like I have to," and realized I was burning myself out. So I do a podcast every week, and then I have clients who help sponsor that, but then I also have I do some coaching, some business coaching and life coaching with people. And then I also am producing videos for most of my clients. So once a month, I'll produce a video for my oral surgeon client. I have a dentist client, Matt McCarl with Duleaf Hyperbarics. We'll produce something to just throw out for them online. Because we have, in January, we reached like 1 million accounts. So we have a large audience. So we're reaching a lot of people that way. Of course, Facebook then throttles me all the time because I say things they don't really like. But I was toning it down for a while, but I'm not real good at it.
You're really
toning
bad
it
at
down.
You are like between a scale of 1 to 100. You are usually between 80 and 100.
I know people like you. One of the first things you said to me when we were starting this conversation prior to taping was, "Yeah, you really do stir the pot, don't you?" And it's like, you know, I really like, you know what I learned a few years ago. So I had a business coach, and she said to me one day, she goes, "So what makes you tick? Why do you do what you do?" And I go, "Well, because I think everybody should have a voice and they should be able to use that voice, whether I agree with them or not." She goes, "Okay, but why?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, why? Isn't that good enough?" I mean, I thought that was a good, and it's true. It was in my answer. And she says, "No, why?" And then I just sat there, and God, as he always does, at a most inopportune moment, reveals this hole in my heart. And I said, oh my gosh. And I start crying. I'm sitting there with me and my wife and her. And I start crying. And I said, my dad never listened to me.
Mm.
He never listened to me. He'd ask me my opinion, and then he'd go do whatever he wanted to do anyway. And I never felt like he ever heard me speak. And I know how devastating that was for as a kid. And so I got into an industry where I was always doing stories on people that didn't have voices.
Wow.
And so I'm still doing that same thing. So she looked at me and she says, so your father helped create who you are today? And I said, yeah, I guess he kind of did. But the bigger picture is that that's how God designed me, so that he took something bad and made it into the real reason I do everything that I do, honestly, is because no one should feel that way. And, and so it kind of targets you in, and you kind of have a better feel for, when I'll get I remember one time when I was at KEZI, a young woman called me up and she said, I experienced Down syndrome. Her name was Amelia Abel. We're still friends. She said, I want to tell people what it's like to be me and live with Down syndrome. And I was doing a little segment on the news that was live called The Water Cooler. And it was a 3 to 5 minute interview, but it was live. You couldn't cut it. So I go to my boss and I said, Alan, this is the story. What do I do? And he goes, well, it'll either be magic or it's going to blow up in your face. And I said, I choose magic. And it was. She came on and she told people how lonely she was, how people lied about having to do things so they didn't have to go to the movies with her. And then that turned into a friendship. And then that turned into a hour-long special called Invisible that I did on all people, homeless people, people with different abilities, people like you and me. I started off with, kids on the street, how we all feel sometimes invisible and how important it is that we are visible. So, that taking a risk and giving Amelia her voice gave me a voice as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you've had a number of those interactions too. Like there was a story that you did with Jimmy Reynolds.
Yeah.
And he had elephantitis. And I remember you talking about it, that you asked, what was that conversation? Because I think you can tell it way better.
And I have a video on YouTube with Jimmy. This is what's so cool about God, I think, is I did this as a news story. Somebody said, you should go do this story on Jimmy Reynolds. And I said, who is he? He says, elephantiasis. And I said, I think I've seen him around town. On the way there, I prayed a little prayer and I just said, God, help me to see him, not for the way he looks, because I'm not being mean. It's just very ugly,
Yeah.
And got to him, and all I could see was these crystal blue eyes. And he talked kind of slow. And we started having this conversation. And at one point I said, so Jimmy, what do you see? What do you see when you look in the mirror? And he says, my grandmother told me that I was made in the image of God. And therefore, God must look like me. And it just blew my mind. And I looked at him and I said, oh my gosh. And I didn't say this to him, but I said, what if God's ugly? I mean, what if we get to heaven or wherever, and they say Isaiah says that Jesus was not something you could look, it wasn't attractive to look at.
Yeah.
So he was just a regular person but what if God is really hideous? Like so ugly. And then we all get there and go, wait, no, where's the pretty God? Wouldn't that be just like God to do this thing? No.
Yeah. Where's the white Anglo-Saxon
version? Where's the white Anglo God that I saw at the Catholic Church painted on the wall, and instead it's, and that's the kind of God that's the part of the thing about God that I love is that he's, and so I think that's kind of how I'm like my father. That one is, I think he made me to prod because I think he wants to surprise us. I don't think he wants us to live comfortable, easy, predictable. He puts you on this earth for like, what? If you're lucky, 75, 80 years. And it's like, but everything's an adventure. He goes to Moses and says, "Hey, you got a good life. Want to go do something different? You're not going to work for you're the Pharaoh's kid. You got all this stuff easy. I'm going to start you all over, make your life look miserable, but I'm going to show you who you really are." Abraham, same thing. Great life. Takes him through and makes him father of all these nations. But his life was hell when he went there. But it was filled with adventure. And we live in a world where I think people want to just exist.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of been the theme of Kathy's in my life since leaving KEZI. I think KEZI was that leaving the TV station was our putting me in the basket, or coming to Abraham and saying, you got a lot, but there's more.
Yeah, 100%. So you actually grew up here in the Pacific Northwest. You actually grew up in Hillsboro, Oregon, correct?
Born and raised there. Yeah.
So what was life like for you as a kid, and who was Rick Dancer? Like, what was your personality as a child?
I was really shy, quiet, scared of people, cried a lot. Always. That makes me cry. I've always been like a really easy cry because and I'm not like, I don't wear my emotions on my sleeve. I'm just a really emotionally built person. And so when you cry as a little boy, you get teased a lot. So I got teased and picked on, and didn't have a ton of friends as a young kid because I was just really insecure and didn't know who I was. So I graduated from high school with a 1.67 grade point average because by that time I had found marijuana and I was a stoner, and that I found friends that way. Started just kind of, but I was always ahead of myself. I was like, when smoking pot was not cool, I was doing it. And when it got cool, I wasn't doing it.
He was a trendsetter. By the way, if you don't know this, Rick Dancer has always been a trendsetter.
I could never figure out when to get on board something. And
early adopter.
Early adopter. I am an early adopter, seriously. But then I had so I worked my parents had an A&W drive-in for a while as kind of a hobby thing. And then I worked at one in Hillsboro. And then I got a job at this lumber yard, and you had to wait on customers. And these are rough, burly guys, come in, they're chew and all this stuff. And I was kind of standoffish for about 6 weeks, and they hired me, and it was a good paying job back then. You know what I mean? So I wanted to keep this job. And Harold Eastman, my boss, came to me and he said, "Rick, these people want to buy nails, 2x4s, and BS. And you're not giving them any BS." And that changed my life because he helped me find my love for human beings and people. And so when I waited on him, I asked him questions. What do you do? What's that all about? What is your life, your project? I used to have like after I was there for like 8 years, and I'd have people come in and they'd wait for me, and they no, I'll wait for Rick. And then I get on, they go, "How you doing?" I'm going, "God, did you finish the deck?" Yeah. Where's John? Where's your kid? "Oh, he's home." "Oh, he's not helping you with it?" No. I mean, I was relating to them, and I'd go out and we loaded them. That was in the days when you went to a lumberyard and they loaded you all up and stuff. And so I had relationship with these people. And when I left 8 years later to take my first job in Coquille, Oregon as a radio news guy, I remember Harold looked at me and had a tear in his eye, and he said, "I think we created a monster."
I think they might have.
And he meant it. He meant it in a respectful, good way. But he had helped me find me, and I was really good at being me instead of being the shy, covered up little kid who didn't have a voice. And I think that's been my thing for my whole careers. I always was telling stories about and I'd get the interviews that nobody else could get because I had then you develop a reputation that you would never tell anybody. You knew how to do this, but I mean, and you have impacted so many people have impacted my life. But when I went to a story, I always used to think, I'm going to leave you with a bit of me, and I'm going to take a little bit of you with me. and it worked because I'm still in, there's people that have been almost murdered and they're still in my life.
Mm.
And there's one woman who was in a terrible, the Dairy Mart killing, Donna.
Mm.
And she and I are still friends to this day. Police used to have to call me to find out where she was.
Crazy.
So it was like you developed, when I went into a story, this was not a story. This was a relationship.
Mm.
And I meant that with people,
So what was do you remember the point when you kind of started toying with the idea of doing journalism? Because, I mean, was that I know that was eventually what your focus was at Pacific University. Was that what initially drew you to Pacific University?
Yeah. So I had to go to community college for 2 years to get my grades up so that I could get into Pacific University because my grades were so bad. Because I didn't have any confidence in myself. I majored in socialization and minored in education. So when I went to PCC, okay, I got another really good story for you too. Because I never took a speech class. I took a speech class in high school and I flunked it because I was so afraid to get up and give a speech about how to make a submarine sandwich. I took an F. I mean, I just took the F. So I went to Pacific University and I was at the Rock Creek campus and it was all these adults and then me. I was the kid and there's a couple kids, but mostly adults. I remember the teacher was the guy who used to write Bewitched. The TV show with Elizabeth Montgomery. And he taught this class because he moved to Portland. He was teaching this class and he just got me. He just understood me. So every time I'd get up to give a speech, I would just get lost in the structure. And my dad was a speech teacher. So everything was about structure. Well, I didn't have any structure. And so one day he says, we're doing improv today. Rick, you're first. And I'm like, what's improv? He goes, something that happened, just do it. So I got up and told this story about taking a shower and I had this bar of soap and it was really small and it was on my wash rag and I'm washing. All of a sudden I don't see the Irish Spring anymore and I'm like, I'm late. I dry off. I put on my clothes. I'm walking to school. And oh my God, what is that? Oh, geez. And I reach back and here's this bar of Irish Spring soap all caked on my back and I'm in school. Well, I had the class in stitches. They were just all... And now I could get this a little emotional. He looked at me and he goes, you get it, right? I go, yeah. And he goes, what are you, Rick Dancer? And I said, I'm a communicator. And he goes, go communicate. And that changed everything.
Wow.
Where you just, I'm on TV. I have no fear. Speaking at engagements, doing all that kind of stuff. I was just back in Oregon doing something for the Bilotis, their MDA golf tournament. And I got to go back and get up and say a few words. And I haven't done that for a couple of years, several years. And it was so fun, Nathan. It was like Michael, the guy, my dentist friend, he wanted me to, I'm supposed to say something, but I'm going to pay for you to come out here and you do it. I don't want to do it. I said, oh, I'll do. Yeah, Kathy and I'll do that. Fine. And he goes, do you get nervous? I go, just a little, because you have to, because that gets you excited. And then you get up there and you just, the first thing I said was, because there's all these people there, Mike Blotty's in front, and we both look older and stuff. And I looked at I go, no, Mike, because Mike doesn't live here anymore either, He goes, I go, do you notice that everybody looks so old? And the whole audience went crazy because they're probably going, God, that's Rick Dancer. He looks ancient, It was really funny. But that teacher was another part, one of those people that helped helped reveal to me who I was.
Well, and it's crazy too, because, being in the speaking world for long enough, you really start to meet two kinds of speakers. You meet the speakers who are really well prepared. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are people that, they have their stories in place. There's a structure to everything and they can deliver. And then you have the wild card speaker like Rick, who is an extemporaneous speaker. He speaks like you have things in your mind that you want to say, but in the moment they come from your heart. And there's a different level of connection that comes forth in that. And I recall you saying actually one point that you felt like you were in a box, that people had a perception of you because you were a news anchor, because this was what people wanted you to be.
Literally in a TV box.
Literally in a TV box. But then at one point you got out of the box and you said, I'm never going back to the box. I'm never going to the back. I'm never going back to that box. What does that mean at that point for you to never go back to that box?
Because I don't want to be tomorrow the Rick Dancer I am today. You know what I mean? I mean, this is helping me a lot. I haven't done this. These are stories I had not planned on any of this. I didn't. But you know what it is for me, Nathan? I feel like, and I don't mean to be all weird on this stuff, but this is just who I am. So it's people either like it or
be weird,
turn it off, But I feel like God kind of whispers stuff to me. You know what I mean? Like it's just, oh, remember? Because I mean, I need this today. This is like really like, remember Harold Eastman? And then do I tell you, remember that speech teacher? I forgot totally about him. And how I got into journalism was there was a teacher at Pacific University. She was a former reporter. She made you go out. She just sat down, here's the book, and now go find stories. And she ended up getting fired because all the students whined because she doesn't tell us what to do. Well, she told me, here's the book. You have access, go find out what it is. So I'd go into the cop station and say, I need to find this and this. And they go, you can't do that. I'd go sit in my car in my little red Datsun 510 and I'd look down and it would say, yes, you can. I'd walk back in. I said, no, actually, I can go through those files. I have the right as a journalist. And then I'd walk out and go, oh, that's so awesome. I can go look at all this information. So I benefited. She got fired because all the other students wanted her to tell. But what they didn't understand was if you're going to be a reporter, you're going to walk into a room and you'd know, they'd give me a sheet of paper. Here's the story that we're probably doing. You'd walk in and in 10 minutes, you had to figure out what was going on in that room and start creating the story. You didn't have, and my wife always laughs because she'll say, you are so good at that. Like walking in a room, you can get a feel real fast for what's going on. What's the major? So when I go into a speaking engagement, people always say, do you have it all written down? I go, no, I have some bullet points. But normally what I'm doing is at the beginning, I'm working around the crowd and finding things to talk about, walk up, stand up, and then something comes out that is happening at that room. So it relates to them. You know what I mean? And then I start in my spiel, and I'm not afraid to go to the deep, dark place because I know how imperfect I am. So it doesn't scare me. I'd say, that wasn't an advantage when I ran for office.
But I mean, it really is a huge aspect of your story, from not having a voice as a child to finding your voice, to learning how to connect with people, to the point that, there was a moment, and I know this probably comes up a lot, especially when people are interviewing you, but May 22nd, 1998 was a horrible day in our nation's history. The Thurston High School shooting. Everyone who was alive during that time, like I even just got chills just even saying the date. You were one of the first reporters that were there, and your ability to connect was one thing. People can connect. Your ability to tell a story, that's also a really important thing. A lot of people can tell a story, but your ability to connect at a heart level is different than anyone I've ever met. Like there's something completely different about that. And in that moment where there's pure chaos all around, and I recall you saying that the principal was reading off names.
Yeah.
And you're on national TV. You didn't even know it at this point, but you're on national TV. The story is breaking all over and you are just overcome with emotion. What did that do for you as a reporter that not even a reporter, but a storyteller? How did that shift the way that you told stories, that you connected with stories moving forward? It
shifted everything. That was the day that the journalist in me kind of died and the human man came out, or they married. I think there was a journalist and there was Rick Dancer, and that day it became okay. So I'm standing there, the principal's reading the names of the people who've been shot, and he hits one name, and the mom, I guess, is standing next to me, and she lets out this blood-curdling scream because she doesn't know if this kid is alive or dead, and she passes out next to me. I'm out in the field, and Lisa Verge, my co-anchor, was back at the studio, and she says, "What's the hardest thing you've seen?" And I say that story, And as I'm saying it, I start crying. And it was like, oh gosh, and then for the crybaby, it was like, this is my moment. You big, big, wimpy baby. Look at you. You're sitting here on national television and you're crying. What a joke. You're just a joke. And I was so mad. And I'm, the scene's over. I'm still there, and I'm, continuing to report. But I'm just like, gosh, just like, that thing you think that you wish you hadn't done it. And it's like, and there was no controlling it. And it wasn't blubbering, but I was obviously pretty upset. I go to my location, and kids are coming out of the library. And they'd taken kids that were in the cafeteria who'd seen what happened, put them in the library, and there was TVs on in there. So about 2:00, this kid comes out and he says, do you notice that all the stories are coming to you first? And I said, yeah, my boss just called and said, you're getting like girlfriend, people that were close to these people ahead of time and before anybody else. And I'm going, I don't know who, they're just coming up to me. And he says, we saw you in the library start to cry. And we made a pact. Because we said, that guy cares about us more than the story. And later, I learned that our engineers they put together so we could go live. We'd never done live national, ever. But, when there's an emergency, things happen that you don't know can happen. So half the time, I didn't even know I was on national television. I had no idea. I'm just doing my job, And the engineer said, when you started to cry, Rick, we heard the engineers in New York City going, wait, ho, wait. This guy's losing it. Oh my God, look at this. I mean, he really gives a damn about these people. Look at him. So that's how they took it. So to me, that was God whispering in my ear, you just be you. You go do you. I gave you these tears. I gave you this ability to cry easily. And I know people teased you about it. That's because they didn't understand it. This is a gift. This is something that is who you are. And Nathan, over the years, still to this day, I'll have people when they first meet me or come on my line or on podcasts or something, and they'll say, I never will forget when you were there for the Thurston shooting. Because we felt like you were going to guide us through this. And I remember there was a moment when somebody from the studio, Lisa, I think, said, so Rick, what are people supposed to do if they haven't found their kids, if they don't know where they are? And I said, well, the district is saying, please stay home and they'll notify you. If it was me and it was my kid, I'd get my butt down here. And a father came up to me later and said his daughter had been shot and was in the hospital. He did not know. And when I said that, he got in the car, drove to the school. They told him she was in the hospital and he found his daughter because of that.
Wow.
So you go with not what is necessarily what you're supposed to do. And see, that's my problem, is I've been rewarded so often for doing the radical rebellious thing that I kind of think that's my first go-to, and then I'll suffer the consequences if I'm wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there's a boldness that comes with that it's funny because as I was going through your story, as I was reading through everything, and as I was kind of writing out even an intro, one of the things that as I was thinking about that moment, in that moment, you became a pillar in the community. You really did. And I kind of went back and forth of like, is that something that I have the right to say? But I can truly say, I think you did become a pillar in the community for people to say, look, this guy is honest. This guy's going to tell us the truth. And even moving forward, that was something that truly followed you all throughout your career. That's why you really started, at least from my conception of why you started Get Real with Rick, because Real with Rick is the truth. Like, you're looking for truth. It doesn't matter if you're not trying to persuade the other person. You're trying to get to the truth of the matter of what's going on.
And that started that whole process with that, like moving into that territory. And I think when I did end up leaving KEZI and then losing the race for Secretary of State, when I created Get Real with Rick Dancer, it was because I've had to be their Rick Dancer, not the public. Well, a little bit maybe the public's too, but I had to be that Rick Dancer, and I wanted to find out who I really was. So all those were steps. It's not who I wasn't that guy, but there was just more that God wanted to reveal to me about that realness. I remember, and I'll tell people too, becoming that pillar, it's a lot of pain because people don't like you too, And I remember there was a couple days after the Thurston shooting, maybe 4 or 5 days, they had a big service at the high school gym with pastors and people coming in to speak. And they asked me to come in and speak. And, it was pretty raw. And I remember being, it's the whole community, and we're just distraught. The town is just distraught because, you've lost 4 people are dead. Michael Nicholas and Ben Walker. We always have to remember to say their names because they were lost. They were killed. And then Faye and Mr. Kinkle also were all killed. So there's a big thing. And I remember getting up, and it was like, honestly, Nathan, I felt like God just took over my body. I mean, I remember getting up and going, and we will make it through this. We will not sue each other. We're not going to do this. We are going to take care of each other. We will stand by one another even when we're wrong. And it was this big whole, thing like that. A week later, the Rolling Stone comes out. And they totally make fun of me. News anchor Rick Dancer gets up and uses Jesus in a video. Just I still have it. I kept it. Hey, I'm in the Rolling Stones.
It's
maybe it wasn't
on your wall.
It wasn't like, no, I didn't do that. But it's not the best. It wasn't like a complimentary article, but it was like, and really it was, because I was saying what I believed to be true. And the world didn't like it. And maybe that was, as I'm sitting here talking to you, maybe that was to prepare me for COVID, for the current world situation, to be able to, he's always trying to build up our kahunas to get us stronger, And when you look back on your life like that, this is really kind of fun and inspiring for me, because I'm looking back at my life and going, yeah, you did some stuff, because when you get into your 60s, you can start feeling like, what am I doing? And I don't ever want to be that was my career.
Yeah.
I'm in my career and I'm still doing stuff. My plan is not to fully retire until I drop dead. I always want to be doing something to give voice to those people, but I have had the richest life because so many amazing, somebody asked me one time, how many people do you think you interviewed? Gosh, I don't know. I mean, thousands and thousands, you know what I mean? Just over the time, I used to have people come up to me and they'd go, oh, you did a story on my son, Bill, and it was so great. He really appreciated that. And I go, and I was being honest, when this is younger, and I say, Bill who? Bill Johnson, and I go, okay, I'm sorry, I don't remember. Oh, it meant so much to him. And my wife said, you have to come up with something better. New, a new answer, because this is not working. So what I did, and I've done for my whole career, is I said, yeah, you just story. And sometimes I do remember a lot of them, but there's some I just don't. And I'll just say, oh, Nathan. Now what's Nathan doing now? And then they go, oh, well, he's doing this and this and this, and then it kind of takes care of the problem that way. But it is kind of crazy.
It's kind of funny though, because in a way you kind of got to experience what kind of like what the influencers now are going through. Like, you were kind of paving that way of kind of, I don't want to say celebrity, but kind of local celebrity of people, getting to be interviewed by you. And, it's funny too, success leaves clues, but just because you can look in the past and see all the really cool things that God was like, oh yeah, look, Rick Dancer had this person in college that told him this. And, there was also his lumber boss that told him and spoke to him and taught him. But there was also other people in your life who completely said you were horrible at reporting. Yeah. There was a professor that said that you would never be a good news writer, right?
Yeah, I had a writing teacher, and she says, you're just not a good writer. And, so, to my credit at that point, I kind of went, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I'm still, I do have some learning dysfunction I've learned over the years with grammatical stuff and some spelling stuff, because I'll get people going, yeah, how can you even be a journalist? You don't even spell right. You did this right. I said, well, you know what I learned from my children's teachers in second grade? I remember going to one of my sons, and I was correcting him. And she says, no, just let him write it all down and then go back and correct it. So that's how I started going, this is keeping me from writing. My inability to do some of these things, these dysfunctional learning patterns that I have, is keeping me from doing it. So now I just write it and then I'll go back and check. And I still make mistakes like that, but I don't care, because this is not a scholarly, look into the psyche of whatever. Yeah. This is, I am doing this to communicate to people. I remember my dad came to a speech one time, and I was like, oh gosh, because it was about him. And it was like, he said, I want to come hear you speak. And I said, okay, Dad, but I got to warn you. A lot of this is about yours and my dysfunction.
Maybe you should come to a different one.
And and he goes, no, and to his credit, he did come. And I remember, and I did it like I would. I mean, I was careful, but I did, I had something I was going to say, and I said it. And I remember he came up afterwards and he said, your technique's all wrong and you do a lot of this stuff not right. And because he was a speech teacher. And he says, but it works. And somehow, I don't know, you connect with these people so well. Mm. And now that's kind of sad. Because now if I could go back, I might, this is like therapy. I might say, Dad, you did that. You were so caught up in how it would come across, and I didn't get that. But the gift that you gave me was that ability. I can connect with people, but on a different level that you will never understand. Mm. That's really interesting.
And a lot of your life has been that way, not only just to report and cover other people's stories, but even in your own life, right? Because when you were diagnosed with prostate cancer, you didn't just go through, because nowadays, some people might talk about it here and there, but for the most part, people go dark. People don't say anything. People don't communicate anything out. You actually kind of did the exact opposite. You documented your entire journey through it, and were a voice to people to get checkups, to make sure you go and get, especially for men at that age, make sure you go and check yourself out to make sure that you're healthy. Because there are crucible moments all throughout your life, but the ones that I see that really were huge, heated moments, definitely the Thurston shooting, definitely your prostate cancer. Like what was that crucible moment that actually heated up and caused more of Rick to come out, to be more emboldened to live?
I think all those, and the cancer was big because it was prostate cancer. And any man that knows about prostate cancer, there's a good chance you can lose your ability to achieve an erection. And my doctor says, are you afraid to die? And I said, no, I'm afraid to never have an erection again. I don't, that would be death. And he goes, you're very shallow. And I go, I know.
But at least I'm honest.
But I'm honest, And so we looked, and I taped that day. I taped a little video, and it was so raw. I didn't air it for a month. I just went, I don't think I can show this to people because it was so raw. But I said to my wife, I can either let other people tell my story or I'm going to tell my story. And I'm not having other people tell it. So I'm going to be really honest and tell the story. And I'd say I was scared. I wasn't afraid to die. I don't think I was going to die, and I didn't. I mean, that wasn't my fear. It really was the other. And I didn't want to live with what I have to live with, is every year get a checkup and wonder if the cancer is going to come back. And it was scary because it was a male thing. It was very male. People go, oh, well, at least you have prostate cancer. Okay, yeah, that's what you say because you don't have it. And yes, it's better than colorectal cancer. There's a lot of more serious cancers, but still, So I did not have surgery. I had radiation because I looked it up, and I'm calling guys. I'm a reporter, right?
Yeah.
So there's a website that has all the treatments these guys get. I'm calling them up. How hard? and they're going, oh, it's fine. I go, no, 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 no. Would you do what you did again? No. Okay, so why don't you just tell me that? I don't know you. You and I will never meet each other, but don't sit here and lie to me so I go make the same mistake. Even friends of mine from church who had it would not tell me, oh yeah, no, everything. I mean, at this point, it screwed them up. And it's like, tell me the truth.
Yeah.
I have to know. Don't make me go follow the same one. And you're like, what? I do what you did. And then 3 months later, I come back and you go, yeah, that happened to me too. Well, I'll strangle you. I mean, don't do this to me. So just all over the place. And my wife did all this researching. I shut down for about 3 days. I couldn't even get out of bed. I just laid there, and she started researching, and then took us about 5 months, and we found the treatment we did. And then even that I did public. I had some friends that were producers out of Portland, and I said, this is a new treatment. You guys should come in here. So they hired them. OHSU hired my friends, and they went through the whole process, sticking the stuff in, doing the stuff. I mean, it was all, nobody saw the, merchandise, but everything was,
we saw everything else on the inside.
Everything else. And you knew, the whole story. But
yeah.
I'd get so many emails from people saying, guys from Thailand, thank you so much. I didn't know that was available, and you really helped me, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I never even thought about that. But and it was interesting because I remember Bob Welch from the Register Guard interviewed me, and they did a big article in the paper about my cancer. And it was like, he's interviewing me, and he says, so what, what's going on in your life right now? And I said, well, my mom died last week, and my sisters are planning stuff, and I'm going to go up this weekend to her funeral. And he goes, Rick, you don't have to do this with me. I go, no, my mom would be fine with this. I mean, it's like, what else am I going to do? I mean, sit and worry. I mean, she's gone and I can't do anything. But he was just so shocked. He put it in the article. His mom died like 4 days ago, and now he's sitting down with me doing this personal article. But stuff like that doesn't, to me, it's all, part of,
It's kind of in the moment. Like that's what I love about your story is your story is so fluid. You kind of roll with the punches. You kind of go along with things. Because it's not that you're going along with the current necessarily, but with your life and where God leads you, you definitely are in alignment. You definitely follow in a way and trusting. In fact, when it comes to like cancer diagnoses, a lot of people would say, I feel like shackles have been placed on me. I feel like I'm in a box and now my life is at an end. For you, it was different though. For you, that process actually freed you.
Yeah, it was freedom for me. Totally. Because all the other leftovers, dross on top of the gold was there. And that was just, but he's not done. This still goes on. But that was like a major heating up. You know what I mean? To just go, Rick, I want to show you how much of you is caught up in who you are and everything. And I'm going to make it so that, when people see you, you're the cancer survivor. And I went to the Relay for Life once, and I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, God bless them for doing that, but it was like, I'm a thriver. I'm not a survivor. I didn't survive cancer. And I don't know that I beat it. I think I used it to become a newer version of who I always was.
Yeah.
And, that kind of stuff. But,
I mean, you've kind of always been at the forefront. You want to be ahead of things. That's why that's why you beat out your twin sister out of the womb.
No, that's because she was doing her hair or something. It's like, good Lord, what are you doing in there? Grab my foot. It's 21 minutes and you're still in there doing your hair. I showed you the way. I came out. There's light. See? And she's still in there. And then my sister always goes, well, she doesn't say it anymore, but she used to say, so why are you so ugly? And I said, because I had my head against your butt for 9 months.
Oh my gosh, this is so funny. So I was curious about this too, because I think there's some kind of, like, you're an outdoor guy. Like, I've seen you in the outdoors. You love to be in the outdoors, but there's something specific about forestry that comes to mind when it comes to you. You have a huge heart for people in the forest industry, but also the forest in general. Where does that love and passion come from for that?
I think it's because that's the true Oregon.
Mm.
I mean, I was born in Oregon. I was raised in Oregon. I just left 2 years ago, and it was hard. But the political climate, I couldn't do it anymore. And I love Montana because it's like Oregon used to be. Just people don't care. It's you do what you do. Just be honest. Even though I don't like you, I'll give you a cup of coffee. We have an Airbnb in our downstairs of our house. It's a big house, and we have some people renting it for 2 weeks, and we're going to be gone for one of those weeks. So I go to the lady who's a realtor, and I rent an office from her, and I just said, "Hey, could you be like a backup if I need, somebody to go?" She goes, "Oh yeah, that's fine." I mean, you just do that. I wouldn't, and it's just like kind of like that. But Oregon was, my grandparents. I'm like a fifth generation Oregonian, and they came out there on wagons. And I mean, and I'm not telling you a Joe Biden story. I mean, they really did. And none of my family was ever. And then my aunt was eaten by cannibals. No, I'm kidding. But they came out, and that was part of their cattle ranchers. They still have a Century farm in Haines, Oregon. When I covered, maybe it goes back to the lumber industry too. I love my clients, my customers, when they come in and just give you a ration. And, I mean, I remember this guy come in and they'd go, and I said, I was always pretty quick. I've always been like, it's kind of a gift. It's like, I'm pretty fast. Sometimes it gets me in a lot of trouble, but sometimes it does. But I remember this guy came in and he goes, I want some standard and better 2x4s with no knots. And my boss looks at me because, there's no such thing. And I just looked at the man and just like, well, when God starts growing trees without branches, I'll call you. But until then, those are your 2x4s right there. And he looked at me and he loaded up, but they take it from me. You know what I mean? I think you'd learn what that job taught me is how far you can push people and how much fun you can have with them. Because I'm a real kidder at my gym. People just, when my youngest son came to the gym with me here in Helena, and you kind of feel like you don't have any friends because I know everybody in Oregon. You know what I mean? I can't go anywhere without still seeing people that come up and, Rick, I see you're in Montana, so it's kind of fun to go home that way. But I'm at the gym and Jess is coming with me, and so I introduce him to Tom, and Tom goes, and I go, "Oh yeah, this is my son," and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." To my son. And then we meet the next guy. Nathan, 5 of my friends all said the same thing. Every one of them. So we get in the car and we're starting to drive away, and Jess goes, "Hey Mom, I met some of Dad's friends. Guess what? Every one of them, when he told them that I was his son, they all said the same thing." And Kathy goes, "What?" And he goes, "I'm sorry." He thought that was so funny because he knows his dad, but you know what it is? It's like the more you put into this life, the more you get back. You know what I mean? And so if you just go, I almost said something wrong, Bobby, but head first, put the kahunas out there and you just go and you just live it bold and like as hard and fast and furious and, and love people more than you deserve to love them. I mean, you know what I mean? Like really, like ask people how they're doing. I used to, when I ran in Oregon, I used to run the bike pass. There's so many crabby people on the bike pass. So I'd run past them and go, "Hi, how are you today?" And pretty soon, after a year, they'd start talking back to me.
Yeah.
But it was like, you're not going to ride this bike path and not talk. I mean, come on, And so you push yourself, and then that pushes other people. Or walking into a restaurant, and when somebody says, "How are you?" go up and shake their hand, but shake it with both hands. Grab the outside and touch them. That's why COVID was so hard for me. It's because I'm a hugger, I'm a toucher, and I'm a lip reader. And I need that connection. And so that was a tough thing. But
well, it's crazy because we live in a world where even though we are so connected social media wise, we are so disconnected from one another.
Yeah.
And it's funny because even I look across when we first moved into where we're in a townhouse, and you can literally see into the person's, kitchen from our kitchen. And I remember going out on our little deck and waving at them. And then as soon as I waved at them, they closed their blinds. Never came out. There's some
Oh,
of
he's
our
a
good
creeper.
There's some of our good friends now. I mean, maybe it didn't help that I was like, hey, I saw that you were making salmon the other day.
Yeah. And when you
should put
invited
on
yourself,
some pants while you're in the kitchen.
when you invited yourself over for dinner, that probably was a little much, but
there's one side of like getting to know your neighbors, and then there's the other side of just being kind to one another.
Yeah.
Like the other day, I've said this a couple times to a couple of our neighbors, but there's a particular couple that's around us, and they moved in not long ago. We got an Amazon package at our house. I thought it was ours. I brought it in. I opened it up, realized it was nothing that was ours. So I closed it back up, looked at the address, walked back out. I walked around all of our townhouses, found out where this person lived, right next door to us. And I walked over. They already had packages out there from Amazon. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just drop them off. Dropped it off, came back to the house. Next morning, I wake up. I'm like, what happened to my package? What happened to my package? It says it was delivered. And so I go back out. I look over to where the package was that I dropped off, and the package is gone, but the other two packages are still there. So I walk down the stairs, walk back up their stairs, look at both packages. One of them's ours, and the other one is our neighbor on the other side. So they had taken their package in and left everyone else's package out. And I thought, how hard is it just to care about someone else?
But see, I think that's why the reaction to COVID, not COVID, but the reaction to COVID was so devastating because it divided us more. Yeah. And it gave more reason to, I won't be specific because they'd know what that was, but there's events going on that are still not going on. I've had people say to me, oh, we were going to have a fundraiser, but people don't want to get together in big groups since COVID. And I'm like going, oh my gosh, really? I mean, that's because that's part of our, when God made our bodies, they're amazing. And if we take care of them, and get the right vitamins and the right weight, and keep our comorbidities down, they'll fight off just about anything. And if it doesn't, then I guess you weren't supposed to fight it off. But, I think when we are so afraid, my favorite line out of the Bible is fret not, because fretting brings on more evil. And I think when we start worrying, and I'm terrible at this, that's why it's probably my favorite verse, because I have to remind myself that if I'm, what can I do about it, Nathan? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People. Okay. So now because I stuck up I didn't get vaxxed, and I don't believe COVID was anything that they said it was. So now there's people that hate me. I can't do anything about that, because if I pretend, and I think for a lot of years I had to pretend in Oregon, and especially with being a news guy. And I remember a lot of people when I, ran for office as a Republican. I was a non-affiliated voter more than I've been anything, and I still am. But I ran as a Republican because that's the game, and that's what you have to do. And I was not a Democrat, so I had to do something. But it was like people would come out and just like, I can't believe. And it's like, what is that? I mean, and they say, you're so different now. And it's like, no, you know what? It's because I saw how intolerant you really are. And I only told you what I thought you could handle, because look, when I really told you what I think, I never lied. I just mean they'd go, oh yeah, well, of course you hate so-and-so. And I just go, well, I try not to hate people. And I just didn't answer their questions. Well, then when I said, no, actually, I think that person's better than the other, then I'm a hater because I've let them see what I truly believe. And I think that's the danger. And what I'm excited to see in the political realm and the cultural realm is people starting to wake up and turn and say, you know what? I don't care if you're X, Y, or Z, if you want to do this or that to your body, it's whatever. If you want to get a vax, good. My body, my choice. So you go do what you want to do, and you can face God and deal with that. And so can I. But don't tell me what to do. My wife and I, that's the biggest thing we learned from the reaction to COVID is don't tell us what to do. You know what I mean? I'll follow the laws and follow the rules, but don't tell me that I have to put on a mask and follow the rules when all the rioters are tearing down people's property and they don't have to wear masks. No, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So, I hope that I'm not supposed to get political here, probably, but
You're completely fine. I'll just cut it out in the back. No.
I'm gonna get Nathan in trouble here.
Oh, look, Nathan was canceled already halfway through the season.
Yeah. Boom. Bye bye.
What I love about you though, Rick, is that you are bold. You do speak your mind, and in a world that so many people don't speak their mind. I think that's what's really interesting, is that there are a lot of people that actually don't speak their mind. There are a lot of people that don't speak their actual political beliefs, their actual religious beliefs, just like their beliefs in general. People don't speak out because they're afraid. They're afraid of what will happen to them if they say something, or if they want to get canceled, or fill in the blank of what it is. And that's what I love about you, Rick, is because you are willing to speak out, but not only that, but you want to meet people where they are. Like you can have a disagreement with other people and you can still walk away. I have friends that we have completely different polar views of a lot of things in life, but guess what? We're still friends. That doesn't mean we hate each other. We can just have conversations that, most people would say is heated an argument, but it's actually just a discussion to come to some kind of common ground. And that's what I love about you, is that you do have a voice. Rick, I do want to ask you one more question here before we jump off. And for all of you listening, I do want to encourage you, go check out what Rick is doing. You can find him at rickdancer.com, or you can go follow him on Instagram. You can follow him on Facebook. You can follow him on X, or formerly known as Twitter. Just search for Get Real with Rick. So much great content that he puts out, and it's real. A lot of conversations with everyday people that, man, I think we could all benefit from just listening to those conversations. But Rick, you started out as a quiet boy without a voice, and then you developed a voice throughout your life, and you become more vocal. And so I really want to ask you this, because I think this is really important in the scape of where we are. We're in a political year right now, our election year. I want to ask you, why is it important for you to speak out? And what would you say to someone who doesn't feel like they have a voice, and every single time that they want to say something, it feels like they just choke on their words and they swallow their words rather than speak out? So what would you, or why would you say that it's important for you to be bold and speak out? And what would you encourage other people to do to be able to speak out and be unapologetic for the things that they want to say?
I think for me to speak out is because that's who I am. And I've spent too many years of my life being a Rick Dancer that people wanted me to be, and I can't do that anymore. So it's part of my, it's me, so why do I want to hide that? Because somebody won't like me? Okay. Somebody's not going to like me anyway, and why should other people speak out? Because it's the window to your soul. I mean, you got this soul in there. And I think the people that don't speak out, that it's frustrating, and it gets covered up, and then you shove it down and you shove it down. And you don't have to do what I do. I mean, I stir it, but you don't have to do that. I don't have to either, I guess, but I'm so I'm so good at it. I like it. I love to get people in a conversation, and people, this new gaslighting word, I hate that word because it's not gaslighting. It's striking up a conversation. You know what I mean? And asking a question to make us think. Half the time I'm doing like what Jordan Peterson does. I'm asking questions so I can figure it out myself. A thought in my head just rolls around in my head. I have to put words to it so that I can see it out here and hear it out around me and go, okay, I spoke that into. If God made us creators, then I'm creating things by speaking it into them, speaking life into. So what if this is wrong? What if this is right? Well, a lot of the questions I was asking during the dark time turned out to be good questions and very true questions. And that I'm not responsible. I was just trying to it didn't make sense to me. So asking that. So for the person who's shy, some people, like my wife, is not going to go out. She will with me and with her friends. She'll do that. She's not going to go do what I do. And I don't expect her to. That's not her personality. So I don't think people should feel like I got to yell, I got to do this, but I think rather than commenting on Facebook or somewhere back in the background doing this, is to just, it's honestly, Nathan, it's this easy. So somebody says, I think there's too many guns. And then you're sitting there going, well, actually, I think everybody should be able to have a gun. Well, no, no, I don't want to argue about it. I just think that everybody should. I have a different opinion than you and be willing to walk away from that.
Yeah.
Because I think when we hold that stuff in, one, it also gives, I think what the thing I did wrong for many years in the news business is I kept my mouth shut. Or I would, like I've been telling you, I knew how much they tolerate, and I only told what I thought up to that point. I think you do that long enough, it's like having a dysfunctional child. You've allowed that to continue, and now all these people are wondering, well, how come all these people are speaking up all of a sudden? It's like, because we've had enough. We're done. So I think try not to be frustrated. And that's a good way to not be frustrated, just to be able to just say, I a lot of the things that I think that I do well is that I follow this guy. He was the ultimate person who asked questions, and he rarely gave answers. So somebody would say a question trying to trap him or get him stuck in something, and he would come back with a question rather than answering that. And then sometimes when he was accused of doing things he didn't do, he didn't answer at all because he knew they wouldn't hear it. So why say anything? So, I think Jesus was setting the perfect example of how to deal with difficult people is ask good questions. And don't be afraid to be wrong. You know what I mean? Or to ask the wrong question or to say something. Because, good Lord, we're all just figuring this out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I heard somebody ask Jordan Peterson the other day, do you believe that God parted the Red Sea so people could go through? And Jordan Peterson says, yeah, I believe that happened, but I wasn't there, so I don't know for sure. And I went, that's what I think. I read it, I see it. It doesn't mean that I doubt in God or I think it's, but what if it's a story doesn't matter. But if I'm thinking about it, I do believe God can do that. Did he? I don't know. I wasn't there. But that doesn't take away. And I think we're so entrapped in our opinions and stuff that we think, if I'm wrong, what if I get done with this thing and God goes, I honestly do believe. I think God will sit down with each one of us and say, man, Rick, look how far you came. He'll probably use this video from your thing to re-show me and go, look at what you told. Remember what you told Nathan? See how look how I had that all planned and how that all worked. But if you would have known, it would have scared you. So I had to bring you along carefully, and we got you to here. And yeah, you made a ton of mistakes. And gosh, I wish you wouldn't have opened your mouth that time, But you know what? You were always looking for what I was trying to show you, And so, yeah, there will be people out there who don't want to ask the hard questions. But if it's something that bothers you, I think you should just say something, or say, just say, I don't really feel that way. Well, how do you feel then? Well, I don't really want to talk about it, but I don't agree with you on that. But let's go, have a beer and we'll be fine. And no. And if they're like the kind of person that says, well, no, this is the way it is, then those are not people you should be wanting to be around anyway. Yeah. So it's, I think it's being secure with yourself, understanding that if you're hearing a question, that could be God whispering in your ear and saying, ask the question. And when he tells you to shut up, then shut up. Now, that's where he's going to have a little talking with me when we're done. I told you to shut up a lot and you didn't listen. Oh, God, you really wanted me to say that. No, I didn't.
How you gave it, you just laid it out there. I just thought you wanted me to say it. You know what I love about what you said, though, so much is that when you operate in who God created you to be, doors just open up. the floodgates open up, the seas part. When you're doing the things that God created you specifically for, that's when a lot of blessing comes in your life. That doesn't mean that hard things won't happen, but there are a lot of blessings that come into your life. And on the opposite side of things, when you're not being the person who God created you to be, there's a lot of consequences that come up. In fact, you've mentioned Moses a number of times, and it just reminds me of Moses. Like, God told him, hey, I want you to be a voice for the people. I don't want to be a voice for the people. And then finally he becomes a voice for the people. They're wandering through the desert. And God says, I want you to go over and I want you to speak to the rock. Moses is known for not only speaking to the people, but for also listening to God. And what does he do? He stops listening. And so he strikes the rock instead of speaking to the rock. And what happens? Penalized.
And now, this is something, you bring this up. So this is kind of interesting. I'm listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson, and he's writing a book right now called We Who Wrestle with God, which I love that. But he says, the reason he didn't see the promised land, not just because I think as Christians we want to go, because he disobeyed. No, well, that's part of it. But it's because God never forces tyranny on anyone. And when Moses took that stick and he hit it not once, but twice, bam, he was usurping authority over that rock when God said, speak to the rock and it will create water. And that's what we're supposed to do with each other. We speak life into people. We don't hammer it over their head. And God did, obviously, Moses was a good dude and he didn't get to go into the promised land. So obviously that's pretty important to God that we not act tyrannically and force people to do things that give us power and take away theirs. That is not how God operates. He says, speak things into existence. You don't beat things into submission. And that's what I love, that, because I think that is the God. That's the God I understand. You know what I mean? And the other thing to remember about old Moses, he was a terrible speaker and God led a nation with him. So if, your gift is your curse. Your curse is your gift. Yeah. And if you learn how to let him use them, I think that it can meld into something just absolutely beautiful.
I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Rick, thank you so much for being on the show. For those of you listening, make sure that you like, subscribe, share this episode with a friend. This is such a powerful episode that has so many golden nuggets in it that I want to make sure you go back, re-listen to this over and over again, because there is so much in this that you can learn. Make sure to speak out, be bold, and until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.